Good evening, Broncos country. Let's wait a minute for all of the streams to come in here.
All right.
All right.
We're
Now,
live.
we're live. Good evening, Broncos country, and welcome to another installment of the Orange and Blue View. I am one of your hosts, Ron White. To my right, your left, is Thomas Hall. Thomas is back. My partner in crime is back, guys. How are you doing today, Thomas?
I'm good. Had fun on my birthday. Hope the show went well. I didn't even watch it. I apologize. I was having too much fun on my birthday. So, but yeah, I'm back and planning on being around for the next few weeks for sure. So, how are things? How are things going with you, Ron?
Good. And I'm glad that you have fun on your birthday. That's what matters. Turning a year old is always nice, and looks like you have some good plans, so that's good. But I'm doing well. As we were talking for the show, it's hot here in Atlanta, so trying to survive this Atlanta heat. But so far, so good. Ready to talk Broncos football. There's not too much news. We're still kind of in that slow period, but there's going to be a lot coming up with training camp and all, and I know you and Luke will be there reporting, so I think we're looking forward to that. But let's say hi to some folks here that are in the chat. Let's see what we got here. So we got Ernie Mays coming in here. Thank you, Ernie. We appreciate you. He says, hello, Thomas and Ron. Go Scott. Go Broncos. Country only. Yes, Ernie. It's always Broncos country only. And again, thank you for that reminder that we're the only one that matters in the football world, at least right now. Yep. So those Chiefs, Mahomes, we don't really care about them. So it's all Wilson, Peyton, and the Broncos.
Well, I'll tell you, Ron, this is what I call the doldrums of the NFL, right? Like we're between so the NFL usually is pretty fun all year round, right? You go through the Super Bowl, then you get into free agency, and then you get it, but between the off season and the mini camps and before training camp, it's always so slow, right? So, we really appreciate you all coming in, joining us on a Saturday night, even though it's a slow period in the NFL, the doldrums, so to speak. It's going to be picking up soon, right? And we've got all these things that are happening, Ron. Like people are coming up with different things to write about, right? So we're really waiting for some news to happen, and hopefully some will. But we'll chat a little bit about Russell Wilson tonight, of course. That's our topic. And we'll chat about anything you guys want. So throw it into the chat and let us know what you think.
Yes, most definitely. And to that point of, there's not much news, but, our staff is constantly finding, different things to write about. So please go on si.com and just check out the articles, all the different perspectives, some of the things that you may not think about from the beginning. I'm pretty sure there's an article out there about it. So please check out, the articles that we have on there. And, that should be at least some good news to kind of get you guys through, this period until we start with real life football. We got David McGrath coming in here with the $5 super chat. Thank you, David. We appreciate you, the man and the legend. He says, good evening, Broncos country. Tom, Ron, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag 20 days. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag Buckham 3 times. Yes. And hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Again, David, thank you very much for your continued support. We appreciate you as always, my man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Really, really appreciate it, David. Thanks for being here on Saturday night. It's a summer Saturday night. We appreciate you taking the time to jump in here. And as always, we really, really appreciate the support. So thank you so much. Let's have Michaela coming in saying, good evening, Broncos country. Coming in on a Saturday night as well. So thank you for being here, Michaela. Really, really, really appreciate it.
Yes.
And we've got Lawrence coming in from Facebook saying, what up, guys? Have you heard the new rule on forward pass? Well, I think you're referring to, I may be mistaken. So I'm not really sure what you mean, but I think it's the handing it off forward. So some of the RPO plays of, you kind of getting that running back going, in front of the quarterback maybe, and then handing it off in front of the quarterback. And I think they're deeming that maybe a forward pass. I'm not sure. I saw that, and I have not dug into the rules yet, Lawrence, but I will for sure. I've been out. I just got back and jumped back into things. But yeah, I did see that. I'm not sure of all of the intricacies of it, but I think it will have some effect on if they're calling it, right? If they're calling that pretty strictly, there may be some effect on certain plays. So I'll have to double check on that. But thanks for bringing that. Appreciate it, Lawrence.
Yes, Lawrence, and I'm like Thomas, where I did see that it came out, but I haven't looked at all the details of the new rule yet. But I do plan to do so, and we can definitely follow up with you on that. And I am interested to seeing kind of how that will affect some of the play calling, doing certain situational football, scenarios. That'll be interesting, especially for the Broncos, obviously, when Sean Payton starts to call plays. But yeah, good question. And definitely we'll follow back up once we kind of dive more into it.
Yeah, and we got Roy coming in. Roy Osborne coming in from Facebook saying, good evening, Thomas and Ron. And Broncos country, finally a beautiful day here in Sioux Falls. So thank you for coming in from Sioux Falls and being with us here tonight. Really, really appreciate it. We've got a few other comments coming in. We got David Youngkin came in real early saying, if Russ listens to Sean Payton and not hold on to the ball, he might have a good chance of having a decent season. It might not be the laughingstock of the NFL. And we are going to, I've talked about Russell Wilson bouncing back. We've all kind of knocked it around, and it's all speculation at this point. I've looked at, past Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks and used the analytics, but it's all comes down to how's it going to play out this season. And really I'll just jump in right here and say what the quote was about. It was a Bleacher Report saying that Russell Wilson, he's going to predict Russell Wilson is going to have his most yards of his career. And I'm going to tell you right now, Ron, it's not a huge stretch to say that. We're not talking like a 5,000 yard season here. His greatest yards per season was 4,219 yards. And that was back in a 16 game season. And if you look at last year in one of the most historically bad offenses of all time, and he only played 15 games. Say he played 17 games. You extrapolate that out. He was 4 or 6 yards short of 4,000 yards for the season. So he was already pretty close to that. I mean, you're playing another game, right? So if he can play a full game, a full 17 game season, he really only has to throw for 249 yards a game to really beat that mark. That's not a lot in a Sean Payton offense, especially in a Hackett offense where he threw 235 per game, which was only 14 less. So this whole prediction in my mind about how he's going to have the most yards per season isn't a huge, like, go out on a limb type prediction in my mind. I think he's going to be better, and I think he can hit that. But like I said, I think he has to be better than that to really impress people. I don't know about your thoughts, Ron.
No, you bring up a good point, Thomas. And when I read Gary Davenport, quote, I was thinking in my head, well, he's already done that. Like, 40, he'll definitely eclipse the 4,000 yard mark. I don't think that's out of the realm of the possible. I think you're right. He has to. I think in order for Broncos fans to really be sure and confident of Russell Wilson moving forward, he's going to even have to surpass that mark. And Davenport also states, and I'll kind of read more into the quotes here, in Cortland Sutton, Judy, and Tim Patrick, Wilson has a rock-solid trio of passing game weapons at his disposal. The arrival of Payton should be a sizable boost to an offense that ranked dead last in scoring in 2022. All the ingredients are there for Wilson to bounce back in 2023. So much that Wilson is going to do something this year he's never done before, which is throw for 4,300 yards. And again, he's been close to that a little over 4,000 mark. So, I mean, it's been done before. It's just a matter of, with this new coach and this new offensive line, because let's think about it. The only person that wasn't there in the pass catching room was Tim Patrick. But of course, you had Sutton, and then you had Jerry Jeudy as well. So with this new rebuilt offensive line, with Sean Payton calling the plays, there is no excuse for us not to hit that mark. I would expect bare minimum like between a 4,000 to a 4,300 yard season. But the sky's the limit. I'm looking more to that. And then I also, before you go, Thomas, I did look at Drew Brees's yards per season in those glory years. And just for a point of reference, and I know there are two different style quarterbacks, I understand that, but around those years of 2016 to 2019, Drew Brees, 2016, 5,000 yards, 5,208 yards. 2017, 4,334 yards. 2018, a little shy of 4,000 yards. And then it kind of dwindles down there from 2018. But again, we know that 2016 to 28, those years were the glory years where they were, in the championship games and the playoffs. And so I can definitely see that with Sean Payton and using Russell Wilson the correct way.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a different quarterback style, but it's an offense that gets the most out of the quarterbacks, right? It's correct. He got the most out of Drew Brees for sure. Mike Guest, thanks for coming in. Just wanted to say hi. I saw Dan Wilk was in there. Mike Guest saying, "What's up, Thomas, Ron, Scott, Dylan, in Broncos country." So thank you very much for being here, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Yes, Mike.
I'm going to grab this other. I mean, we were talking a little bit about Russell Wilson, and we've talked a lot about Russell Wilson. Our thoughts are pretty similar. Everybody's hoping for a bounce back. I think he will. I think a lot of people are predicting it. But there are other things that are coming up, right? We got training camp coming up. We're not going to know how good Russell Wilson is really until the regular season starts. Right. Is he back to, at least back to where he was, and hopefully better? Hopefully Sean Payton even makes him better. That'd be great. But training camp's coming up, and there's a lot of questions out there right now. And Jason O'Neill's coming in with a question for us saying, "Good day, Thomas and Ron. How's Broncos country?" Well, hopefully we're doing good. We're almost to training camp, so it's coming up. It's going to be fun. But which players have the most to prove, whether it be offensive side or defensive side of the ball, and who are the potential cuts? Now, I'm going to assume potential cuts, meaning maybe veterans that aren't safe kind of thing. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of young guys that are probably going to be cut and then maybe brought back to the practice squad or looking for another team. But I'm going to go with, players who maybe a surprise potential cut, right? So, Ron, you got any thoughts on this? Because I have several.
Yeah, so I want to. So how's Broncos country? Well, Jason, we're optimistic. To kind of answer your first question, at least I am, and I hope you guys are as well. Heading into training camp, it should definitely be a good year. At least we're hoping for that. I know we've said that a lot, but at least we're hoping for it down with new coaching. Potential cuts. Well, actually, we'll bounce off the last question. I want to get to the most to prove first, Thomas. So the most to prove, and I don't think this is much for debate, Lloyd Cushenberry, guys. It's Lloyd Cushenberry, and I don't think there are some other candidates out there you can maybe put on that list, but definitely Lloyd Cushenberry has the most to prove for this offensive line. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We all know what we saw last year, and it was just downright awful, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. And now with a new offensive line coach, with veterans there, that's going to help him on the offensive line with Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, there should be no excuse for him to at least improve. And all we're asking for is average to above average center play. So in my mind, on the offensive side, offensive line specifically, it's Lloyd Cushenberry. Now, potential cut, Albert O. Albert O is the one that comes to mind just because I don't see a use for him. With Dulcich and then I think the other tight end they brought in from New Orleans. Yeah, and Tom, and then the other tight end, that'd be helpful for blocking mostly. I forgot his name, but
Manhurts is the blocker, and Troutman was as a pass catcher. Yeah.
Yep. Troutman, thank you for that. Troutman, Dulcich will be kind of the pass catchers, and Manhurts coming in to help block. What role does Alberto have? So I can definitely see him being a potential cut, and maybe I know it was floated about one of these receivers being traded, but they could cut one of the. I mean, again, Hamler could also be a cut. I again with And we talked about this the last time, well, actually with me and Lance, where, Hamlet just got this newly adjusted deal, but it's more of a, you know, prove it. It's a win-win for both parties, for him and for the team. But, if he's coming injured, because he's already injured, he already suffered that torn pec injury here in the offseason. And if he goes into the season more injured, it's like, well, you're not available to stay on the field. So we have to do something with you. And I can see him being a potential cut. But yeah, I can definitely see those two for sure. Alberto and then possibly the KJ Hamler being cut.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think on the offensive side, who has the most to prove from my perspective? Obviously, it's Lloyd Cushenberry, definitely, but I actually think Jerry Jeudy has a lot to prove as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been on the cusp. We keep seeing these videos of him out there running routes, and people are, it's his year, he's going to go off. I think he's going to have a much better year, but he has to prove it first, right? Okay. He has all of the tools to be a star wide receiver, and you can't blame him too much. He's been in a poor offense. He's had not great quarterback play, things like that. But he has a lot to prove in my mind, and not just on the field, off the field too. He needs to step up his leadership game a little bit too. I mean, he's now going to be the core of the Broncos. They're going to have to make a decision on him, whether to keep him around soon. So for my mind, he's got a lot to prove this year, and I think he can do it. I think he can come out if he stays healthy and has a good year, but a first-round draft choice who is supposed to be really, really good, who's only been, above average, right? Statistically speaking. And, some of that has to do with injuries, but that for me, Jerry Jeudy has a lot to prove. On the defensive side of the ball, I keep going back to the defensive line. It's Mike Purcell has a lot to prove in my mind. He has to stay healthy. He has to prove that he, when he had that big contract, because he could also be a potential cut. Now, I don't think they will because they're very thin on that rotation still with veteran type players. But if you see one of the young guys step up and push Mike Purcell for that job, he could be a potential cut. But from my perspective, KJ Hamler makes sense even with a redone deal, right? And I know it protects KJ Hamler a little bit and gives him more of an opportunity to be there. But if he can't be a third wide receiver, if he's that fourth wide receiver, where is he going to play in special teams? And I brought this up on Wednesday. That's the thing to me. If you're the fourth, fifth, or sixth wide receiver, you have to play on special teams. And they have a punt returner and they have a kick returner already kind of penciled in. KJ Hamler might beat them out, but I just don't see KJ Hamler with his injury history and his size running down the field covering kickoffs, or running down the field covering punts. I don't see it. So he's going to have a huge camp. And if he doesn't, if he's that fourth or fifth wide receiver, then they're going to make a decision to bring in somebody who's a better special teams player. So that's one potential cut. And Alberto's definitely there. But the big surprise for me, that I think that a big surprise because they brought him back is Kareem Jackson.
Yeah.
If those other safeties in that room show that they are ready, if Caden Stern makes that next step, right, and you see some of these young guys make that next step, Kareem Jackson's expendable. His deal is one that's written that there's very little dead money, right? And he, great leadership. It's great to have him around the locker room, but we saw his game has declined. If he's not able to hold off those young guys, you might see him cut, which is a big surprise, right? Because they brought him back. So those are my side. I really thank you for that question, Jason. That was a really good question, and yes, everybody's thinking about it, right? Everybody's mind is there. Yes. And Luke Patterson and I will be out there at training camp, and we'll bring that news to you when we see it, and we'll have a different perspective on who's leading that those groups or whatnot. But thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. We got Gary Palmer coming in here
with Super Chat. Thank you so much, Gary, and thank you for being a legend of Mile High. Yes. And he comes in with a question that says, "Hey, all, just a thought about the vaunted Sean Payton run scheme. If Wilson does too good, maybe the run games suffer. Go Broncos. Buck 'em." Well, legend Gary, legend Palmer. I know it's Leeds, but I'm going to call you Gary Legend Palmer. I think it's a great question to think about and to ponder, and thank you for the support. Yes, I really hope that the run game and Russell Wilson complement each other well. Right. And I think, I'm hoping that it kind of goes back. I think it's going to be a better offense than Seattle ran, but I'm hoping that run, to me, Russell Wilson kind of plays off the run game better. I mean, he's a great deep ball guy. And if you can get those, you can get a good running game going, it may open that up even better. So that's I'm hoping it doesn't. I mean, but today's a passing league, right? It just is. So the running game is just suffering because more teams are passing. But what I really hope is that the new offensive line acquisitions are able to run when they want to run the ball, right?
Yes.
So in the 4-minute offense, they impose their will, they run the clock down. That's what I'm hoping for. And if that's what, if they can complement each other, and then when it's time to run, they can actually run the ball, then I'm happy. I don't care if the running game is, not one of the tops in the league. I want to be able to run when it matters. Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, good question, Gary. I would say I don't think the run game will suffer. I think you're right, Thomas, in the sense that I do see them complementing one another. We saw a very balanced attack in New Orleans with under Drew Brees and Sean Payton, and I expect the same here in Denver. It's going to be running the ball to set up the pass. You'll see a lot of boots and passes out of the backfield to Javonte and P. Ryan. The offensive line with these new additions, they're going to maul people. You'll start to see those holes open up. And then, when Wilson does drop back, for the pass, those receivers should be available to catch it. So I don't think the run game will suffer. Also, remember, Russell Wilson running himself, right? So I don't see the run game suffering with Sean Payton's scheme if Russ is that good, because it's going to be with the communication of Russ and Payton, it's going to be again that running to set up those play action type passes, those deep ball throws that Russell Wilson is used to throwing. So expect a good complement where kind of one sets up the other. But yeah, you're right, Thomas, that 2-minute drill, if we're up with the ball, fourth quarter, 2 minutes, I expect the crowd to be into it loud. We just run the ball, run the clock out. And so expect a lot of that as well. Kind of similar to our, 2015, 2016 Super Bowl run where, of course we had Vaughn and we were up and the crowd was in it. So I wouldn't say it would be just like that, but expect kind of that similar effect. At least that's what we're hoping for. So.
Hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I'm getting tired of them not being able to run the ball. I want them to be able to go out there and just impose their will. And that's for me. Maybe it's boring, but that's how you finish out games. I was going to give a shout out to Colby Collier coming in with Facebook stars. No comment. Go ahead and put a comment in if you want. But thank you for the support. Really, really appreciate it, Colby. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Colby. We appreciate it. You got Roy Osborne coming back in here. Thank you, Roy. He says, getting back to Russell Wilson. I think there will be a bounce back from Russ, but I don't see 4,000 yards since we will be a run first and or run heavy offense. Thank you, Roy, for that comment. And, I said, the over 4,000 yards is kind of to be expected, but this is an interesting take. It depends on, you're right, how the run game goes. And Sean Payton has different creative tricks and ways to use the running backs. You might see, again, passes out of the backfield to P. Ryan and Javonte. You'll see play designs where it is a run, like kind of a run design play. But again, I do also expect these receivers to be used. It's going to be, I'm envisioning those 2016 to 2018 New Orleans Saints years with the Michael Thomas and the Brandon Cooks and the Willie Snead, right? Where, these receivers still were open, although the running was used to kind of help set up the pass, and you saw that balanced attack. So you could be right. It kind of depends on, the ebb and flow of the game and kind of how Payton uses and what he calls. There could be more running plays in some games than passing plays. And I expect to see that. So, of course, if that's the case, you may see maybe not 4,000, might be like a smidge below 4,000, might be the under. But based on what we've seen, based on Russell's ability and the fact that we know what he can do, and especially with Sean Payton under the helm, expect for that passing attack to come into play where those yards start to come into play as well. But yeah, that's a good perspective, depending on kind of what they do on the run game. I agree.
I don't think it's going to be as run heavy as people think. I think they're going to focus on the run, but it's not going to be as run heavy. And this is why. Number one, Sean Payton came in to fix Russell Wilson. That's his number one job, right? To win games and fix Russell Wilson. He's going to want to get him out there throwing the ball so he can show that, there is some ego involved. I fixed Russell Wilson. Look, he's throwing the ball better. He's got 4,000 yards, whatever. But there's a ton of pass catching threats in this offense. You got Cortland Sutton, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got Tim Patrick. They've just drafted in second round Marvin Mims. They've got those guys. They've got Greg Dulcich. They brought in Troutman, who's a pretty good pass catcher. I mean, and then you've got backs out of the backfield Pirine is a pretty good catch back out of the backfield. So you've got all of these weapons. I think Sean Payton wants to utilize them. I don't think he's going to have a boring offense. I mean, he's going to have a balanced offense. I think he's going to focus on the run to open up the pass a little bit more. But I think there's just too many enticing pieces that are available to Sean Payton that he's going to want to have Wilson to throw to. I think if Wilson stays healthy, he's going to be able to go over 4,000 yards. Will it be his most yards in a season? I don't know. It's just 17 games. If he can play 17 games, it's almost hard not to hit that. He has to have a pretty bad season not to hit it, even in a run-heavy offense, from my perspective. But I mean, it's going to be right there. Like I said, if you took 17 games for him this season, he was 6 yards, I think, off from 4,000 in a bad offense that was historically bad. It couldn't score points. It couldn't really move the ball, only in the latter parts of the game. So I don't think it's a stretch to think he can hit 4,000 yards. And I don't think it's going to be as run heavy as folks think, because it's just too enticing, right? And Peyton's a great play caller, right? He's going to call plays that work, during the game. So it's going to be moving the ball around, I think, a lot between pass and runs. So,
yep. Well, that's a good perspective there, Roy. Thank you very much for that comment. We got Michael Davis coming in here. Thank you, Michael, for your comment. We appreciate you. Interesting point here. He says the entire wide receiver room has a lot to prove. 48 million locked up, highest in the league. Prove you can stay healthy, downfield block, and make clutch catches when it matters. Yeah, I agree, Michael. It's the wide receiver room. Yes, definitely has some things to prove. As you mentioned earlier at the top of the show, Thomas. Jerry Jeudy. Again, we liked what we've seen from him, but he still has a good way to go when it comes to being that it receiver for Denver and a top 5 receiver in the league. We also need to see Cortland Sutton bounce back. And, he's kind of been, ever since that 2019 run, he's kind of been up and down since. So, hopefully he can come back and play at the level, go back to those 80-20 balls that we're used to him catching. And then, as I mentioned last week, I don't think it's going to be underestimated the value of having Tim Patrick back. I think with Tim Patrick back in this offense, Mr. Sure Reliable Hands, as they mentioned, might be one of the best football player, in the Denver Broncos locker room. So having that back to kind of help his leadership, his presence, helping Sutton and Jeudy and Mims even, I think will definitely help. But yeah, you're right on, Michael, that this wide receiver room definitely has a good bit of things here to prove. And, again, prove you can stay healthy. That's the key, right? Health, availability, making sure, hopefully with the new strength and conditioning, they can stay on the field and make those important catches when it matters. So I definitely agree with this perspective.
And absolutely. I mean, like I said before, Jerry Jeudy has a lot to prove. He's got to prove that he is a number 1 draft choice wide receiver, right? He's got to deliver. He's got to be the big guy, right? The go-to guy, the He's got to show everyone that he can handle that big role, right? He should be going over 1,000 yards. That's a lot to prove. Then you've got Tim Patrick coming back from injury. I hate to say it, but he has a lot to prove just because is he healthy enough to play like he was before he got injured?
Yeah.
That's significant. Cortland Sutton, like you said, he looked like he was on a trajectory to be an all-star, got injured, and he's not been quite back to where he was. And then you've got KJ Hamler. He's got a lot to prove as well. I mean, they signed a deal with him to prove that he can stay healthy. So, they've got that. And then you got Marvin Mims, a second-round draft choice. He's drafted high. He's got a lot. You're absolutely right. This entire wide receiver room has a lot to prove. They have the potential to prove it, though. That's where I'm coming from, right, is I think they have the potential to do so in the right offense. I think last year the scheme wasn't good. It wasn't scheming offense. Wasn't scheming wide receivers open. I think Sean Payton will be able to do that. They'll get easier looks at the ball. They'll be able to get some open field type opportunities more so than last year. So I think they have a lot to prove, but I think they're going to be able to prove it. Hopefully, I'm a little worried that Tim Patrick. We've got a lot of expectations for him, and he's still going to be coming back, trying to get back to his former self with that injury. If it was, 2 years removed from that, I wouldn't have any worries, but he's got to come back and do that. So, yeah, thank you for that question, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yes, Michael.
We got Keith Brugman coming in saying, happy birthday, KJ Hamler. We're talking about wide receivers, talking about KJ Hamler. It is his birthday. That's right. So, hopefully he is going to, show out this training camp and become a good, a great player for the Broncos. But his question is, still a Bronco this time next year? I don't think so. I just don't think he will be. And like I said at the early part of the show when we were talking about wide receivers, is unless he can become, get into that third or fourth wide receiver position, he's going to have to play special teams. And I don't see a spot for him on special teams with the acquisitions they've made. And they've already brought in someone that's similar to him in a draft pick who will be 1 more year more experience. And they have Montrell Washington. I don't know if they got plans for him, but he's a similar player. There's too many similar players to KJ Hamler. I still have a feeling that even with his reworked contract, that they may end up sending him in a trade. I don't know. I mean, I hope not. I like KJ Hamler. I think he can really lift the top off of a defense, but his health is really that's a question mark. So what do you think, Ron?
Yeah, thank you, Keith. And yes, happy birthday to KJ Hamler. But yeah, to answer your question, no, he's not. Again, kind of going back to what Thomas just laid it out of, where is he going to play? He's going to be behind Sutton, Judy, Patrick. It's going to be the fourth. No, they have Mims. I think Mims is going to end up kind of supplanting him. And then for special teams, like they already have a plan for Montrell Washington, and they already have Turner. So what's his role going to be? And right now, from the way things are constructed, I just don't see a role for Hamler, even with the rework contract. And then, confounding that with the injury bug. Again, he already has another injury, a torn pec. So, you're you're kind of already bitten by the injury bug, and then trying to figure out where you're going to be in this offense. Depending on how it plays out, I do see Mims. I have high expectations for Mims. I think Mims is going to come in and do well. And so that leaves the question of how are we going to use Hamler? And that's what I was saying. I really see him more as if you can get something out of a trade for him, great. But I definitely do see him more as a potential cut for sure.
And on top of he's part of the old regime, right? He's part of the old regime, and they're going to want to move on with the players that they want. So it doesn't bode well for Hamler, but I don't want to. I want him to do well, right? I want him to do well, and maybe a change of scenery would help him. I'm not sure, but it's I don't see him. I don't see him there. I don't see him there next year.
Yeah.
And I'm going to grab another Keith's comment because it's kind of on that injury line. He says, Thomas and Ron, there are a lot of players that should get a pass because of injuries or the coaching ineptitude, but what players don't get a pass? That's a good question, right? I mean, I'm giving Russell Wilson a pass because of the ineptitude of the offense. The coaching last year was horrendous, right?
Yes.
He was injured. I think he's done enough over the years to give him a pass. But players that don't get a pass in my mind, that have to live up to their contract or whatever right now, Randy Gregory is the top of
Oh,
my
yes.
list.
Hmm.
He has never played a full season. He's often injured, often suspended. He doesn't get a pass in my mind. If he can't show up this year, then he's gone. He is 100% gone. His contract is basically was written so that they can get out of it after this year without too much pain. So in my mind, there's no there. I'm not giving Randy Gregory a pass at all. And maybe that's because I didn't like the signing. Maybe I'm a little jaded. I didn't care for the signing at the time. But he came out and he showed what he can do, and then was hurt, and then wasn't there. So he has no, in my mind, I don't think the coaches are giving him a pass either this year. I think they're going to go hard on a edge rusher again in next year's draft to find someone who can replace him if he can't be on the field.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Randy Gregory's actually at the top of my list as well, but there are a few others that come to mind. I'm going to keep Lloyd Cushenberry doesn't get a pass. Cortland Sutton doesn't get a pass, nor does Albert O. They don't get a pass for me. And I know with Sutton, he had that injury, and I know it took a little while for him to come back, but even when he was back, he still wasn't. And I know it takes a little while for them to kind of find their footing after the injury, but still, I feel as though he could have still done more when he returned. Kind of going back to the season that he had, but yeah, I agree. I think those four players for sure definitely need to prove themselves. We were talking about that question earlier, proving themselves this season, because regardless of those injuries and or the coaching, they had their opportunities. But it'll be interesting to see exactly with the new coaching how they hold up. And I'm expecting good things from all four of those players, knock on wood that they stay healthy.
That's right. Yeah. And we got Timothy, I think it's Lagon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Coming in saying, I see Riley Moss, the rookie, listed as DB. Does that mean he gets reps at safety? It's funny because there was talk in the draft that he may move to safety, right? But all the coaches talking about that he's a cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this: the more versatility you have in the NFL, the longer or the more of a chance you have of sticking in maybe a longer career. So you see swing tackles, people that can play along the inside of the offensive line, they end up sticking around. DBs too. If someone can play safety and cornerback, has that versatility, that's even a better shot of sticking around for a while. So if he can play safety, it benefits him. But from what I've heard, what I've read is they want him to play cornerback. And I think that, he's going to have a hard time getting out on the field. On special teams, no. But is on the defense going to have a hard time getting out on the field, even if he can be versatile, right? Because they're pretty stacked at cornerback right now. Not great in the rotation, but pretty good at the starters for sure, and some good depth and safety as well, right? They've got a lot of safety depth as well. So I don't know. I think he may get some, and we'll see it at training camp if he's out there with the safeties.
Yeah, thanks, Timothy. And when he does start or get on the field, he could potentially get some safety reps. But again, I don't see him starting. With all that we have at corner, obviously PS2, Damari Mathis, K'Wan Williams. We're already stacked there at corner. And then coming on special teams, I don't see that either. But he's a DB. They did say that he does have some safety versatility, and he can possibly play that position maybe in certain situations. When he's starting, they may line him up as such. But Sean Payton explicitly said in the presser that he will be corner. So expect him to play that position for the most part when he comes on in this defense.
Yeah. Now we've got Chad coming in, the boss man, giving us a super. So thank you so much, with some rhyming to boot, which is awesome. He says, predict the next Bronco to make the Hall of Fame. Orange and Blue View. That is what we do. It's true. It's a podcast you will not rue. Orange and Blue Crew. Thanks for the rhyme. Thanks for the poem, whatever you want to call it. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. I'm going to come out and say I'm predicting Randy Gradishar to the Hall of Fame this year. And I'm going to give you one little caveat. It depends on who the senior committee is. Last year, he got snubbed because of a certain senior committee member. Whoever's selecting it this time, hopefully is pro Randy Gradishar, but it's his time, right? He was in the top. It was 1, 2, 3. Then it was Randy Gradishar, and then a couple other people next. He's in line to do it. I think he's the next one that gets in the Hall of Fame. He's a senior committee candidate, so it's a little harder. There's a huge amount of backlog there, but it's Randy Gradishar for me. And if I had to pick the next actual non-senior committee member going into the Broncos, it's going to be Tom Nalen. I think he's going to get in. I think there's going to be some buzz that's going to start going for him. People are going to start looking at his career with a better, more fine-tooth comb instead of just, saying, oh, he was a center for the Broncos and they churned out 1,000-yard rushers like it was nothing. So I'm going to go with that. But Randy Gradishar's, I think he's getting in this next year, right? This next time around.
Yeah, you took my two. I think it's going to be Randy Gradishar as well.
It's his time.
It's his time. I think, they've passed on him a lot, and he's way overdue. So I predict him and being there in the next Hall of Fame when they do their nominations. He being a shoo-in for sure. Yeah, Tom Nalen is also a good choice. I know they've passed on him, and he's very disrespected and underrated in my opinion. So, but I can definitely see him probably maybe in another few years making it. But yeah, the next on the list for sure, without a doubt for me, is Gradishar.
Yeah, I only say that with Tom. Centers is the hardest position to get into the Hall of Fame. If you look at how few centers are actually in the Hall of Fame, and I'm talking modern day, I'm not talking about the two-way players from back in the day. I'm talking about centers from the modern era. They're the hardest to get in, and they require the most, kind of accolades to get in, right? Like the minimum seems to be 5 all first team all pros, or you're not even getting a sniff, right? Where you've got wide receivers who are in the Hall with 1 all pro, right? They're in the Hall of Fame with 1 all pro first team, right? So to me, it's harder to get them in because it's so easy for them to look at stats and go, oh, well, these guys are way high on career stats. Let's bring them in, and not really thinking critically about how important these other positions are that are on the offensive line or whatever, wide receiver, running back. They're always bringing them up. I mean, you've got like, you've got people nominated that are kind of head scratchers for me, like over other people. So, and people making it into the semifinals are head scratchers to me as well. I think Fred Taylor's has a pretty good shot of getting in. And I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he's got the career numbers to be a Hall of Famer, but you never considered the best running back in the league at any point in his career. He had longevity and he stuck it out and was able to run up those yards. But I don't know. We'll see. I think I'm hoping that Tom Nalen, people start to look at him again and say, okay, the first and only two of centers who paved the way for 10 1,000-yard rushers and 1 2,000-yard rusher. Kevin Wise, the other one to do it. He's in the Hall of Fame. Played for New York, where people got to see him play all the time, and he was kind of an easy one to put in. But I think they kind of give Nalen, they don't give Nalen as much credit because of Alex Gibbs and all that. But if you look at Alex Gibbs, when he left with Tom Nalen still playing. Tom Nalen still was able to get those yards, and wherever Alex Gibbs, he had success, but not as much success as he had before. He had different centers and wasn't able to do it. So you got to put a lot of credit on Tom Nalen with that offensive line and how they went about their business and what they did, and changed the game. Like the zone blocking scheme now is predominantly used in the NFL. That's long lasting of impact on the game. So
yes,
you got to give him some love for sure.
Definitely.
You got Phil coming in saying, good evening, Thomas and Ron. On the road, just wanted to say hello. Buckham, Mile High Huddle for life. So thank you for jumping in here, Phil. So, sorry that you got to be on the road, but hopefully you can catch out the whole show later and put some comments in there, like the show, whatever. So,
yep. And it looks like Michael Davis coming in. I just want to grab Michael real quick, kind of agreeing with us, kind of going back to the boss man's question. Gradishar was recently voted as the greatest NFL player to ever wear number 53.
Yep.
Hashtag Hall of
Yeah,
Fame.
and actually, you could he wore number 52 for early on, so because 53 wasn't available, so you could put him in 52 as well, and he probably is the best at 52. He, in my mind, he's the best short yardage inside linebacker of all time. And obviously the best tackler too. And I know there's a
Yes.
lot of oh, they didn't keep official stats. People went back and verified those 2000 tackles, right? It was no joke. And if you watch games, you go out and you watch Randy Gradishar's games, they're out there on YouTube, and you tell me that he's not racking up 10, 12, 15 tackles a game. He was. It's no joke. I mean, they may have missed a few and gave him a few more here and there, maybe gave him a few more assists or whatever when they were doing that. But you watch his games, the guy could tackle, and when it came to short yardage, there's nobody better. So absolutely, best 53, best ever wear number 53. And the problem is, back then there is a small market. People were not, you didn't have access to all the game film. You didn't get access. Voters watched the teams that they were in the area of, and they were all on the East Coast, right? So they're all watching East Coast teams. Denver didn't get a lot. If they'd have won that Super Bowl, if the Broncos, the Orange Crush defense had brought that Super Bowl home in 77, that would have put at least probably three players from that Broncos team in to the Hall of Fame. They didn't win it because the offense coughed it up 8 times. And I mean, it's pretty hard to win when your offense is turning the ball over at that rate. And, it's a iconic, legendary defense. All the other legendary defenses from back then have a Hall of Famer in. It's just the Orange Crush doesn't. So it's his time, and that better happen.
Yes. Yep. All right, let's see.
Yeah, Keith coming back with a pretty decent comment, and I think we're gonna see if there's a few more comments in here, but this is a pretty good one. Sean Payton said he told coaches to ignore how the player got here and look at their ability. What surprise player makes the 53? I had one in mind, and unfortunately they went back and re-signed Cam Fleming, but I'm still going to stick with it. It was Alex Pilcheski, right? I think he's a undrafted rookie, plays tackle. He's going to sneak onto the roster. That's my projection. Even though they did go back and sign Cam Fleming and bring him in to be back then, it was just Isaiah Prince who was the rotational guy, right? So I was really worried about the tackle position. So that's why I kind of started looking at Palczewski. Tons of experience in the Big Ten, right? He's one of those players who always gets out there and plays football, and that's why I think why I'm kind of got my fingers crossed for him, hoping that he sneaks onto the roster. I mean, there's always been that undrafted rookie free agent that ends up making the roster. I'm going to put my money on him. Not a lot of money, of course. I'm not going to bet a lot of money, but fake money I'm putting on him to make that be that big surprise.
That's a good one. Surprise player to make the 53. I would. I'm thinking. Jaleel McLaughlin comes to mind. Yeah. I was thinking. I know he's kind of gotten some hype there in the offseason, and I guess we'll see kind of what comes of him in camp. But McLaughlin would be a big surprise. I mean, the skill is there, the talent is there. So, if he does make that roster, I guess it really wouldn't be a surprise. I would actually be happy for him. But I guess, given what's in the running back stable now, with P. Ryan and, they're high on Javonte, obviously coming back and whatnot. It might be a stretch, but yeah, I'm going to stick with McLaughlin.
Nice. I'm going to grab Michael Davis real quick because I didn't even think about coaches. When I went to the Hall of Fame, I was thinking players, but Shanahan is a candidate. He might be the next one in, actually, after Gradisher, before Nayland. It might be Shanahan because there's a lot of buzz going around for him. So thank you for reminding me. I was thinking players, but you're right. Shanahan is up, and he has a pretty decent shot in the next few years in my mind. So thank you for that. And we've got Jeff Smith coming in saying Shanahan is my number one choice. So that's great. Jeff, thank you for the shout out from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Fellow New Mexican, thank you for coming in. Appreciate that. So Santa Fe, beautiful Santa Fe. I'm down in the Albuquerque area. So yeah, thank you for coming in with that.
Thank you.
All right. Ron, let's wrap this up. Right, we've got to most of the comments. It's been a fun show. Don't forget to check out the other shows. They're all fun, right? They all have a different perspective. So, and I'm going to give a shout out to Legends of Mile High next week because we've joining Friday morning. We got Gil Whiteley, been in the business for over 30 years. Is going to join the show. He knows all the legends. He's been to all the camps. He's going to have a great perspective. So don't forget to tune into Legends of Mile High Friday morning to see Gil Whiteley. It's going to be fun. And as always, like the show, subscribe, do all the stuff. Thank you for the support. And Ron, any closing words of wisdom at all?
Yes. So again, not let your hearts be troubled with the slow news. It will start to pick up here soon with training camp on the horizon. So I know everyone's excited to hear about the buzz and the news coming out of training camp. As I'm gonna state again, your fellow hosts here, Thomas and Luke, will be there in attendance. So those should be some good perspectives coming out. And again, just as Thomas mentioned, check out all of our podcasts, check out the articles on si.com, grab some merch, and find us on Twitter. If you have any questions, comments, be sure to follow us and check us out on Twitter. Thomas at Thomas Hall NFL, and then myself at Ron White NFL. And we will see you guys here next week.
Yeah, see you next Saturday, and we are going to start, diving into training camp here pretty soon. So have a great evening and go Broncos.
Go Broncos.